Hi, this is African Scrapintherapy, and today I want to show you a page in my art journal. Now, this page was born out of a mistake, or not a mistake, because there really isn't no mistake in mixed media, but it was a page that I wasn't too fond with, and it started out with using my portfolios, and what I did is I saw in YouTube a technique in where they did like an ombre effect with watercolors. Now I wanted to use my portfolio instead of regular watercolors, so I created, the yellow. I put yellow, orange, red, and then black, and it didn't come out quite as I envisioned. It was, it was a little streaky. The black wasn't quite staying where it needed to be, and I just didn't like it overall. So I went over with gesso, and I used a brayer instead of just covering it all up with gesso because I wanted some of the color to come through. And then I decided to go over it with a stencil and some more watercolors. This time I did not use portfolio. I just used regular watercolor crayons that I have here, and I used my little Reeves watercolor crayon, and then I have these other ones that are Sargent watercolor crayons. So I used my watercolor crayons to kind of go over it. And what was happening when I stamped this and I was using my crayons, I noticed that the gesso was peeling off underneath as I was composing, or as I was coloring these flowers. And I really liked that effect. I mean, the gesso pulled off, and then you can see the color underneath, the ombre effects underneath and over here too. And I started liking that a lot. And then I went over it with some my paint, and this is one of those Japanese paint brushes. So I went over the lines again with the paint, and the doll was the same thing. Now the doll, I did not want to peel off the color to reveal the underneath. What I did is I left the gesso on the doll, and I went very carefully over the gesso, because since I use oil portfolios underneath the gesso, if I scraped the gesso off, it will come off. It was not completely adhering to the page. So I went over it with a little bit of watercolor and a little bit of watercolor on the butterflies. And then after I finished that, I went over it with, this is my mixture of alcohol inks and some mica powders, and it's mainly the dollar store makeup, shadow makeup that you can buy, and you just mix it with some alcohol and create your own little misting. So I mist that over, so that's why you see that little antique look on top. But I really, really like this page. I think it's one of my favorite pages that came out, and it actually, sometimes your best page are the ones that are created from your mistake. So what I wanted to show you, I want to create another page just like the same, and I want to show you how I create that page. And this time I am going to use my stencil, and this is the Gardenia stencil by Bloom collection. So I'm going to use her because I really like her. I'm also going to use this Finnebar 12 by 12 stencil, and this one, don't know the name of this one, but I really love this stencil, and I've seen it in a lot of mixed media projects. They use this stencil, and I love it. I was having a hard time finding it, and I'm glad that Prima brought it back out under the Finnebar collection. And then I'm going to use this Stampendous stamp. It's one of those huge stamps. And I think this is the Fiorni, and I'm going to use that here. Maybe put some of that there. And I might only use one stamp. Not sure if I'm going to use one or two. And I may put another butterfly stamp there. So that's what I'm going to use. Of course, I'm going to use my portfolios again. I'm going to use some black black acrylic ink in order to put my doll on, and I'm going to put my doll maybe facing this way, facing towards the page here, and I might put her here. You're going to need your gesso Don't forget your gesso. And then I'm going to use some watercolor paints. And I'm going to be using the same paints I used before. And this little box is where I keep my Reeves, my Sargent watercolor, and then also these Twinkly H2O are kept in this little container. I'm gonna use some of this modeling paste as well to give some accents on my page. Of course, you're gonna need a little plastic spread or one of these things, and that's pretty much it. So I hope you like this page and stay with me, and let's get to it. So this time, instead of using the colors I used in the last page, I'm going to go ahead and use a peachy color, the yellow, the orange, and red. And then I'm using a makeup sponge to kind of smear it, but I end up just using my fingers. It really didn't help. I was trying to prevent it from smearing all over the place like I did with the last one, but you'll have to use your fingers. So here I'm using my gesso and just spraying it on my page. So now I'm ready for my stamp, and I'm using acrylic paint and a makeup sponge. And just be very careful that you don't, you want to pounce up and down and not smear it. Otherwise, it's going to smear underneath your doll. But even if you do smear it, that's okay. You can always go back with it and with gesso. And right now I'm using acrylic paint with my stamp. Just be very careful with your stamps and make sure you really clean them. And use a brush. I use a toothbrush to kind of get the acrylic paint out of the edges and the divots of the stamp, because otherwise it will get ruined. Now I'm using just a regular bamboo calligraphy pen, and I'm just scraping off the top layer of the gesso, revealing the underneath coating of all the paints. And I really am loving this technique. It's a little more tedious. You really have to work it. And make sure you don't get rid of all your lines on your flowers. And then you have to go over it with a paintbrush, or your Pitt pens might work. And I'm just using a Japanese paintbrush here because I've noticed that this little gadget works very well for this technique. And then I'm using a China marker to go over my butterfly, and I'm doing the same thing on the other flowers on top of my doll. And going over with my Japanese paintbrush. Now I'm using my crayon, watercolor crayons, and you really don't want to use the crayon directly on top of your image because you will scrape off the top layer of gesso. So I'm just putting the crayon on my craft mat and then using water to make a little watercolor paint, and then using that on my images on top of the gesso. And see how it kind of makes it look like, it gives it that translucent quality, and soft colors. I just love this technique. So, and I also wanted a little bit of color in the background, so I did introduce a little bit of green, like you can see there, behind my flowers and also around my doll. And then I'm putting a little bit of color on top as well. Not a lot. I want to keep that translucent feel. And then the last thing I applied was my stencil, and I'm just putting a couple of little spears around my stencil and a little bit of white. I did introduce a little bit of white with my white painter marker. So here's my completed journal. I really love how this page came out. I love that it has like that really soft, translucent feel to it. The doll doesn't have, I didn't want to use acrylic because the acrylic was going to be too heavy for what I wanted to accomplish. I wanted the color from underneath the page to shine through the gesso, but not too much, to kind of be a little bit on the background. And I wanted really my flowers to pop, as you can see there. It really looks nice. So I hope you like this technique, and give me a thumbs up if you do like this page, and please subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more videos on scrapping therapy. So see, until next time, thank you for watching. Bye now.